Hello there, welcome back to another week of shows. As you see this week I don't have any pictures up, mainly because I'm shooting this before the last week's videos come up, so I don't know if there's any good or bad reaction. Also, some of the films I'm doing this week, you don't want to put pictures up of. So, either there's nothing visually interesting or the pictures can be pretty gross. So I'm avoiding pictures this week, but if what I did last week gets a good reaction, I'll do more visual stuff. Basically this week I've got a mixture of things. I've got a general video, I've got a TV show, I've got another film from the Middle East, and I'm going to start with a double bill. This double bill is Braveheart and Serbian Film. Now this is unusual for me talking about these, because normally I talk about films I like. That's my thing, is I get bored talking about films I don't like, so I'd rather talk about films I like and start from there, because I think you can get a lot of good stuff from that. If there's something you find interesting, there's more to it. But every so often there's films you hate, like I hate these two films, spoilers, I hate them. But there's something you can talk about with them that's actually potentially interesting. So I'm not opposed to doing films I hate, it's just most films I hate, I just hate and that's it, there's nothing really to say about it, I just don't like them. These are films I hate for specific reasons and I think they're worth a video. So, but it's not something I'm going to be doing all the time, it's just something, if there's a film I hate that actually gets something to it, yeah, I'll do a video on it. So, these are two very different films. Braveheart's a big Oscar-winning epic by Mel Gibson before his fall from grace. Set in Scotland. I'm Scottish. Apparently everyone in Scotland's meant to love this film. We don't all love this film. A lot do, but not all of us love this film. In case you're watching from overseas, we don't all love Braveheart. And the Serbian film was released recently. It was very low budget. It was very notorious. It was banned in lots of countries, and it's shockingly bad. It's a really bad film. It's stunningly awful. It was like I expected something offensive, but I didn't expect it to be as bad as this. This is. I know it was banned for various political reasons, like it was disgusting and all the rest of it. It offended people, but really, it's not worth watching. Actually, it's like. It's a bad film. You're going to be bored through most of it. You're either going to be offended or bored. There's nothing really to it. So, those are two very different films. The reason why I'm pairing them together is they're both obsessed by violence and obsessed by having a violence as the main meat of the film and having all these pretensions towards themes and story and all the rest of it, when the primary concern is violent retribution and violent action, and they're meant to be talking about, I mean, Serbian film has pretension things talking about the effects of violence, but it's not. And Braveheart's meant to be about revenge and how it affects society and things, but it's not. Everything that happens in Braveheart is about the violence. There's nothing else there. Braveheart is not historically accurate, by the way. I don't want to spend the whole video going on about why it's not historically accurate. You can go on YouTube, you can go on Wikipedia, you can go on various sites and find out what the historical inaccuracies are. But the middle battle, the Battle of Stirling, was actually the Battle of Stirling Bridge, and really the only puddles I saw or any kind of liquid I saw in that sequence was blood or pools of blood. There was no bridge, there was no, it was like the battle was, famous for a bridge. You don't even have the bridge. So that's how serious you should take this historically. Braveheart is a ridiculous film. It's really ridiculous. Mel Gibson, who's way too old for the part and looks craggy and way too tanned for playing a Scottish guy. I mean, look at me, we're all pale. The only time someone's not pale is they go to a sunbed. Scotland's raining for most of the year. maybe about 2 months of the year, you might get a bit of a tan summer, and then it goes again pretty quickly. No one has tans in Scotland unless you actually pay for it. And he comes in all tanned and, you know, very un-Scottish like. He's actually doing this, he's doing this Kirk Douglas thing. Kirk Douglas in the 50s did some of these historical epics that basically the Vikings or Spartacus. I mean, I like Kirk Douglas, but these were egocentric trips. But they were much more fun than Braveheart, because Kirk Douglas could play up the camp in the hokum, and he knew how to do it, and it was fine. But it was still Kirk Douglas being the saviour of various oppressed peoples, or, you know, or being a villain, or being a mad villain or something. But it's always like Kirk Douglas in these historical epics, and if you're feeling that's what Gibson's after. Because this film is the egocentric Spartacus. Spartacus was the Kubrick film. Kubrick was brought into it later. Kirk Douglas set up about a gladiator escaping and fighting these great wars to get the freedom of his people, and he ends up dying. Same structure as Braveheart. There are other epics maybe influenced on the Charlton Heston stuff, but the Charlton Heston stuff's actually better than the Kirk Douglas stuff or the Mel Gibson stuff. Let's get El Cid, and El Cid's brilliant. That's what this film wishes it was. It wishes it was El Cid, but it's not, because Mel Gibson's no Anthony Mann, and he's no Charlton Heston as an actor. He's just not. And they actually had scripts, and this has cliches. So the story is basically this guy, William Wallace, who was a real historical figure. He was kind of someone who came before Robert the Bruce. In this film, I try and make him appear to be the most important person, the person who really got Scotland some independence for a while. And Robert Bruce just rose from his shoulders to do the final step when, no. No, William Wallace is a historically minor figure. Robert the Bruce is historically the major figure. So this film already starts off by elevating someone who did some stuff against the English, but wasn't the main guy. He just wasn't. No one teaches stuff about this guy in schools. Maybe you get a little bit about him, but it's all Robert the Bruce. So he's a minor figure they try to elevate in this film. And they elevate him in really stupid ways. Which is, he gets taken by his father's a poor farmer, and then when his father dies and when the uprising against the English, he's taken by his uncle and learns to read, learns to know Latin, and learns all this culture stuff, and there's all this stuff about a real man doesn't fight, a real man uses his brain, and I'm like, yeah, everyone speaks in speech bubbles, this film. Everyone speaks as a cliche. This whole film is, when I saw this, I kind of think of what some people thought when they saw Phantom Menace, you know, where it was like, this is offensive. I never had a problem with the Star Wars prequels. I got beyond Star Wars by the time they came out, so I was never like, or anything. But this one, where it's just, people speak in speech bubbles. No one communicates with each other, it's just speech bubbles and cliches thrown at each other. You're meant to take it seriously. And I kind of feel that's what people object to the Star Wars prequels, but I said I'd moved on. But in this one, that's all you get. It's like speech bubbles thrown at each other, and it's like, there's no characters, there's just these cliches. And all the Scottish people speak as if they're 20th century Scottish people. They don't speak Gaelic, they don't speak, there's no sense of individuality between any of them. You get Brendan Gleeson as Mel Gibson's pal, and then there's various other people who have interesting faces that he puts on, and that's it, that's all they get. There's no real character to any of them. They're just boring. And they all speak broad Scottish accents, but the Scottish accents from the 20th century. And it's like, Scotland's a very kind of macho culture, but they wouldn't have spoken like that then. There would have been differences. That's the kind of thing I'm willing to kind of forgive though, because every film like this makes their own way of dealing with language. I'm willing to accept that if they'd actually characters. They don't have characters, they just have these speech bubbles thrown at each other. They're just boring people. And the worst one is the Mel Gibson character, who goes from being someone who wants a peaceful life, even though he's coming back to Scotland, which is under the thumb of the English, and there's lots of very severe laws. So the last place you'd want to go would be Scotland. If you're Scottish, go somewhere else. Go to Ireland or something, just don't go to Scotland. Or go somewhere in Scotland where the English aren't as prominent. And it's just like, this doesn't feel right. This feels like things have been squashed in to make the Mel Gibson character look romantic and other. And it just feels, the way it's done especially, it just feels like we don't want everyone just to see this as a violent spectacle. We better actually have him being romantic for a bit before he starts murdering people for 2.5 hours. So we'll give him a romance for have a wife and she'll die. Now the wife looks up at him with puffy eyes for a bit. They date for one scene before they get married, and then she tells him what's what, and she's not going to. She shows she's independent. She's not going to put up his guff, and then she gets killed. So he gets revenge for the rest of the film. It's really absurd. It's like, oh yeah, you give her one scene where she shows she's tough, as if to prove she's not just the person there who has to die. And then you have ghosts of her throughout the film, and it's hilariously tedious. The whole scene, almost every scene with him and his wife is just awful. Plus he's like 20 years older than her, so it's literally robbing the cradle type of thing. Because Mel Gibson looks really old in this film. You look back on it, he does not look like a guy who he's meant to be playing. He looks like an older guy who's dating someone who's like 19. Is like dodgy. So there's that. I mean, there's a phrase called fridging, which is basically a woman who's only there to be killed so the guy can get revenge. And this is the perfect example of it. Especially since the kind of, in modern times, you get killed for this. Like if you were making a film set in modern times, you get killed for it. Partly historical accuracy allows this to happen. Because, in historical times, people died in horrible ways, and the English were awful, blah blah blah. Which they were, but it's still a convention. And it's still there, because as soon as she's dead, the film starts to murder people indiscriminately. Just murdering English people. And it revels in it. For a good 2.5 hours after that, you are getting blood every half hour. There's going to be a big bloody sequence. And there's like decapitations, people's arms and legs are getting chopped off, people are getting massive swords through them. It's like it's like they gave Gibson every weapon and let him smashing people. And it's all about rage, some sort of rage. And it's nothing to do with Scotland versus England. That's just a excuse. Oh, it's the English who did this. It's like, no. The thing that offends me with this film most is Scotland-England tensions have been there for, 1,000 years. And it's complicated. There's no one way or the other. It's very complicated. Yes, this film shows there were lords who had lands in England and Scotland. There were political people who kept the Scottish people down for their own gain. Yeah, there's that. But that evolved throughout the years. And Scotland came and went from being closer to England to being much further away, to being enemies. It evolved through time. I mean, for a while there was obviously a wall that the Romans built to keep Scotland out, so there's this whole thing about give Scottish people the freedom. They had freedom for a long time, and then they politicised everything and they lost some of it, and they were against Edward Longshanks, this one who wants Scotland for himself. But even after this, there was they got the freedom, move up to Bruce, and then for a while there was another kingdom. This was a very Catholic kingdom. This was a religious element to it. Because it went from paganism to Catholicism. And in this film, everybody's a good Catholic boy who calls the king a pagan monster. The English king a pagan monster. And it's like, Scotland came from paganism. It's like, Scotland was much more complicated. Then they went to Catholicism, but it's more complicated than what this film was showing. Scotland's not a big Catholic country. It's very complicated. Yeah, and Scotland ended up consuming England when James I took the throne from Elizabeth I, because he was the only person who was allowed to take the throne because he was a blood relative of the Tudors. So Scotland ended up consuming England. And of course, Scotland was sold out instantly because if you're a Scottish king, you look at England, where there's much more people, much more land, you think, I saw Scotland. It's just lots of hills, you know. So Scotland's always had a problem. But it's always been complicated. You have religions rise and fall. You've had states evolve into Scotland. You've had Scotland becoming a complicated area where it was a hotbed of Catholicism for a while in like the 15th century, before this film was set, as it went against the Tudors who promoted Protestant rule and things like that. So it was a very complicated thing. This one is just like Scotland needs its freedom. Scotland and freedom it's as complicated as any other country in freedom. Yelling freedom doesn't mean anything. It just doesn't. It's a complicated system. The system then was tied to the ideas of God, and your representatives are the people of God who are representing you. And it's just like, a lot of it's just nonsense. The whole political thing in this movie is just takes what's potentially interesting, makes it nonsense. Like they make William Wallace a saint in this, and you're thinking, of all the tactics you see him doing in the film, a lot of them seem stupid because they're trying to make him a saint rather than, oh, we have to follow him down, we have to say, oh, he won this battle, he went and attacked England, then he come back because he was betrayed by his own people, and end up getting killed. Well, in actual fact, you could just argue he didn't get on with some of the other rebels against England, and they probably sold him out for better gain, but maybe he was a bit of a dick. Which was probably more accurate to reality than this. Because, I mean, it's easy to give someone sainthood when it's, you know, any political thing. I agree with them, so they're a saint. And you don't need to do that. Because this film does that for Gibson. He does it for himself towards the end in a really obscene way. Right, so it's a historically it doesn't really tie into Scotland and its problems. And its problems with, you know, religion, its problems with the lords and what they expect from the people, its problems with how the people never really rose up and organised properly because they were tied to religion, and this one, religion's the thing that saves people, and reality is it's much more complicated. And this film has no time for complications. And it's the thing that needs is complications. This is a very complicated time, but you'll get that. What you get is Gibson going for godhood in this character. So his wife dies, he says he'll never love another. Then he has a romance with the French queen who is married to the gay Prince of Wales, who's married her for political reasons on orders from his father, Edward Longshanks. And the best thing in this film is Patrick McGowan as Edward Longshanks. He's the only good thing in this film. He's the only good thing. You wish the film was all about him. Because I'm Scottish and I like him better than anybody who's meant to be Scottish in this film. Mainly because he's so entertaining. And even then, he doesn't have very good dialogue. He just makes it good by just his delivery. But his dialogue just garbage as everyone else's dialogue. The dialogue in this film is awful throughout the film. It's just terrible. But he makes it work through like determination, I think. So he's brilliant. But everyone else is garbage. And they make him so obsessed by this bloody rebel when he would actually in fact be obsessed by the noblemen and what they're doing and are they financing them and stuff like that. And the whole thing is to give the character a god complex. Like all Scotland tied to what he does. Like Robert Bruce, the guy who actually got freedom from Scotland, is so tied to what this William Wall's character wants. And then at the end, once he's captured, once he's been sold out by the Scottish nobles, which really needed more complication, he has a bit where he says he won't accept an easy death. He'll be cut, hung, drawn and quartered. He will do it, and he yells out freedom at the end. And there's all these shots to make him look like Christ. And so we could tell he's going towards the Passion of the Christ for this film, the end of this film. It's really pathetic to watch. It was like Christ-like imagery throughout the final section, as well as this weird bloodlust of seeing him getting tortured. Like, Gibson likes to get tortured in films. It's been well documented. But this is the weirdest thing, because there's all these Christ-like things. And he directed it, and there's like, have you no shame? This is just strange. This is really weird. But yeah, no, it's Christ-like imagery up the kazoo. It's just terrible. And that's why I just hate this film. It's taking something of my country's past and doing it for the allowing an actor director to pour as much violence on the screen as possible. None of the action scenes are very action packed and interesting. They're just about gutting people, and Gibson's got this massive sword which he puts through people, and obviously there's no gay subtext. Just saying. But he's happier with the boys, and he's happier gutting people and snapping people's necks, and he's got all these weird romantic looks towards Robert the Bruce that's very strange. You know, it's just weird. And every so often he has to shag a woman just to prove his character's not gay. It's really weird. And he gets tortured at the end for his country as if he's like the ultimate martyr. It's just hilariously bad. In the end, Robert Bruce has this handkerchief that Robert Moss's wife gave him, and he ended up having on his death, and he dropped it. Now Robert Bruce has it and sniffing at the end. And you're looking, okay, there's not many meanings of this one, is there? But the whole film is just egocentric as hell, and it's just, and how it's tied to Serbian film is its love of violence is just disgusting. I mean, I like gore in films just like everyone else. It's fun. It's not a new reality. This film just likes the gore too much. It likes the heads getting cut off. It seems to be obsessed by it because there's way too much of it. Because any time you could suggest something, or you can show someone getting their throat ripped out, it will show you the throat getting ripped out. Arms are cut off left and right. It's just bodies flying everywhere. It's like more insane than any Rambo film. And you're meant to take it seriously. And at the same time, Gibson's doing this I Am Christ thing before he did his Christ film. It's just so bad. And the Serbian film has the same kind of superiority complex about it. That, yes, we're doing a genre film, but we know what it is, so we're going to subvert your... This one is we're going to subvert what you expect, but we're actually going to just follow the same cliches as everyone else. But it thinks above it. It's the same as Braveheart thinks is above, you know, its subject matter. When it's just using the subject matter as an excuse for tons of gore. This one is using a genre exploitation film as an excuse for tons of disturbing imagery that's not disturbing, it's just sick. There's a difference between disturbing, because disturbing ties you to something that you might not want to acknowledge. Sick is just showing you some sick images and try to say, oh, you're complicit in this. I mean, it's like, no, I wouldn't be seeing this unless I watched this film out of curiosity. And it's just sick. It's just nothing. It's just sick for the sake of being sick, which is the same feeling I get from Braveheart. It's like, it's sick for the sake of it. There's nothing there to it. It's just the filmmakers feel the filmmakers have a problem which they can't address, so they throw up all their disgusting demons in the face of the audience. And this one is a guy who was a porn star in Serbia, who's trying to retire. He's running out of money. He's got a family now. He's got a wife and he's got a little kid. and he wants to move on apparently, but he needs money. So some guy offers him money to... He can't know what the subject is, but if he does this thing and signs this contract, he'll get a lot of money. And he signs it, and it's sort of like a deal with the devil, as a suggestion, because he signs away his life without knowing the consequences. Which could be interesting, but it's not. Because the lead character is so unsympathetic, and so... He needs a shave to start with. He's this grubby looking, ugly guy. You know, that's all he is. He's just... He's got a wife who you wonder why she married him. He's got a cute little kid. And the whole point of the film is to taunt him with child, you know, pornography and things like that. That's the whole point of the film. It's to taunt this guy with images of children and sexuality and what they call newborn porn. And it's just disgusting. And there's no point to any of it. There's no point. It's just like, I'm going to make you feel sick by watching this. That's all it's got to it. I mean, it's one of those films I never want to see again. Apparently the version I saw was cut, because you see it's got a runtime of 145 minutes. The one I saw was 135. And I'm happy to have seen the cut version, because I don't want to see any more. That's garbage. It throws in your face everything that you would never want to see in a film, but does it without any taste or any, you know, sense of responsibility to your audience. The same as Braveheart does. It's just I'm going to throw you gore in your face and that's it. You're going to choke on it. I mean, the Braveheart seems to be thinking it's elevating towards heaven by showing you this hell on earth, and you're going to elevate towards heaven and Scotland will be free or something, some bollocks. And this one, we're sending you to hell, and at the end of it you'll feel disgusted with humanity. But what's the point? It's just like a person's psychosis thrown on the screen. The lead character never does anything interesting. He just gets oppressed and more oppressed. He's got a brother who sells him out later on. It turns out he's a pervert. He's a policeman who's a pervert, and he's helping the villains set his brother up, which you figured out 2 seconds into the film. As soon as you see a brother pervert, he's going to sell his brother out. There's no suspense there. The family, obviously, as soon as you see them, they're going to be degraded. That happens with way too much enjoyment by the director. And at the end, basically, spoilers, everyone dies. And there's a scene where the guy's tricked to having sex with his own 5-year-old son. How's that? What is that about? You don't see it on screen. It's suggested, well, the cut I saw was suggested. And it goes, the kid's now traumatised for good. And it's like, you know, giving them drugs and stuff, and it's like, what good is that for anybody? That's just disgusting. It's just, there's nothing there there has to be an intellectual component to any film if you're going to try and disturb people. There has to be a point. In Serbian Film and Braveheart don't have a point. They're just gore and disgustingness for the sake of it. You could call them primal films, but they're not primal in any way because they don't relate to anything. They're just, it's like they're throwing up stuff to get out of the system of the directors. There's no actual social value to any of it. It's just there. I mean, Serbian Film is the most disgusting film I've seen for a long time. It's just horrendous. I would definitely recommend never watched it. I mean, there's no value to any of the gruesomeness of any of the stuff you see. And to be honest, for most of it you're pretty bored. And every so often they realise the films are really boring, so they throw up some of obscenity. And you go, oh, that's disgusting. Which is the same I felt watching Braveheart. I was like, I'm bored from most of it. Oh, that's disgusting. It's like, it's these lifeless things, these lifeless models floating through these dark, because every so often they just have to murder people just to try and get a buzz from the audience. It's just this quality. And then most films just have that quality. It's just like you feel sick after seeing them. They're just like, ew, this is horrendous. And it's a thing about modern filmmaking where people want to go further And we've already kind of gone to the point where we don't need to go further. We've got to the point of upset that people want to accept. I mean, no one's ever going to upset people the way something like Texas Chainsaw Massacre did, because it suggested stuff and never showed it. But it was the closer you get to hell without going over the edge. And from then on in, people have to try to throw gore at the screen. And sometimes when you throw gore at the screen, you can make it really work like kind of John Carpenter's a thing, because it's about an alien creature and there's a reason for it. And so it's like watching some new life, and that's fine. But this is just disgusting things that happen. I'm not just for the sake of the director just feels like getting off and torturing an audience. That's all it's about. That's what you feel when you're watching the film. The director's enjoying torturing you for the sake of for their own sick need. That's how you feel watching it. And I think that's pretty disgusting. And I'm not for censoring anybody or banning anything. I'm against that. I think people should make their own mind up. But this film, I would definitely say don't bother watching it because it's garbage. It's total garbage. There's no interest. I watched it out of curiosity and I kind of regret it now because it's pretty disgusting. So hopefully I haven't ranted too long about these two subjects. I hope I've kind of tied them together. It's just like this kind of... It's a rise of egocentric filmmaking that's all to do with just making people feel sick and maybe throwing some pretensions at the screen like, oh, it's historical, or oh, we're doing it to really shake you out of your apathy or something by showing you some stuff you can't believe. But if you don't do it with taste, you don't do it with a point of view, it's just gore thrown at you and there's nothing to it. And I think we're seeing that more and more now. And I like silly movies too, but if you're trying to do a film and protesting you're taking it serious as a metaphor for something, if there's a serious reason for it, all you're doing is just throwing like gore at the screen and that's what you're doing, then you should really feel bad about yourself. And I think that's what these two films do. They just throw stuff at the screen and they're just ignore anything that they could possibly do that's of interest. And there's a lack of humanity to both of them. They don't believe in characters, they don't believe in people, they believe in people are flesh and are just objects to be thrown at each other and cut up and go, you know, just they're really being used for gore rather than anything else. People don't matter. Every character is a cliche. The people who make these films don't know what people are like. They just know cliches, and they're just throwing these bits of meat against each other and hoping for effect. So I hope you enjoyed this. That's it over. That's my rant. We'll see how this one goes. Again, I'm not sure I'll be doing that many films I hate, because I don't think you get much from it, but I thought these two were kind of... These two made me mad enough to want to do a video on them, put it that way. So, I hope you enjoyed this, or I hope you enjoyed me being mad about something. I'll see you next time with a more upbeat video.